Hello everyone, I am Julian Morris with the Channel 5 News. In the headlines, Dominica welcomes a new team of Chinese medical specialists. Prime Minister Kerry tells a town hall in New York his administration will not deny them the right to vote. And disaster management standards to be made into law by the end of this year. The details of the news coming up.
Here are some tips to reduce mosquito presence in and around your home. Keep water storage containers properly covered. Remove containers that can collect water from your surroundings. Keep garbage bins tightly covered. Pick up your litter and remove all tires from your yard. Keep gutters free of leaves and twigs to prevent stagnant water. Prevent Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. Fight the bite. This is a public service announcement from the Dominica Red Cross.
This message is supported by Flow. First up in the news, businessman Frederick Joseph had to be admitted to intensive care at the Princess Margaret Hospital after the complete destruction of his business place at Pottersville on Monday night. Joseph, widely known by his customers as the Juice Man or JB, was hospitalized because of complications surrounding pre-existing health conditions. The mild-mannered Joseph has had an impact on both local and visiting customers who have sampled his fresh local juices and smoothies. A number of individuals looked on while others provided support as firemen fought to bring the blaze under control.
You know, it's very, very sad to see, that place down to ashes. We just want to encourage him as a community, as Pal Rep, too, because I think he's hypertensive, and it means for him to be saying that he doesn't even have a place to live. That's where he lived. After the hurricane, his place was destroyed, just a few blocks away. I just want to encourage the community to step up to the plate and give him whatever support. I want to call on government to step up to the plate, because it really was a labor of love for him to have put that structure in place. He took his time and he had a real good product there. There was a dance area, eating area. A lot of elderly guys would come hang out.
Just last Saturday, JB reportedly had 30 visitors at his place.
So I just want to encourage, government to really step up to the plate to help him immediately so that, he can get some semblance of normalcy in the quickest possible time. But in the meantime, I'd like to call on the community, business and otherwise, to really give him the moral support and financial support that he needs at this time.
The Labour Party's candidate for Roseau North and the MP for Roseau South were also on the scene to provide support. DNO is reporting Joseph as saying he has put everything aside to build the place over the last 20 years. Joseph, who lived in that same building, is now homeless. Disaster management legislation to be enacted this year. Andrea Louis has a report.
That announcement was made by Minister for Climate Resilience and the Environment, Joseph Isaac. Isaac was speaking at the closing ceremony of the Support Emergency Preparedness Through Emergency Shelter project, which was executed by the International Organization for Migration, IOM, and funded by USAID. The minister says the resilient rebuilding efforts are to help Dominica become the first climate-resilient nation in the world.
Therefore, to that point, I would like to say that this government remains committed to ensuring that the legislation which deals with disaster management will be enacted this year. We are on the path to doing it. We are almost ready. But this is one of our policy initiatives to support all the work that IOM is doing and to put it actually in legislation which would encapsulate all the processes involved and the work that you have done in regards to training, and put it in legislation so that people can know what we need to do by law.
Improved and well-equipped emergency shelters have been deemed key to disaster risk mitigation.
The central government is pleased to announce that the government will construct 2 regional shelters in Jimit and in Casibus with funding from the European Union. We have already started a model emergency shelter that's a regional type of shelter currently being completed in Layu. And again, I want to also point out that under the Disaster Vulnerable Risk Project, we have in place early warning systems, which are part of the whole process of mitigating against disaster.
The project, which ran from September 2018 to June 2019, saw the refurbishment of 16 emergency shelters, training of ham radio operators, production of an emergency shelters manual, and raising community awareness of and preparedness for disasters, among other aspects of disaster management.
We are very proud of the results of this program, and we get so many positive reactions from the communities, from the trainees, and also from our government colleagues and counterparts. We have the feeling that together we have ignited an emergency preparedness movement. You know, we're started. There's something happening. People are talking about it. When you had last week the small earthquakes that were affecting the south of Dominica, and people, we saw on our Facebook site a peak of attention, people asking questions, what's happening, how do we respond, is this going to happen more? We also got one of the volcanic specialists all of a sudden knocking on our doors, if you can need help, where can I advise, etc., etc. So there's something happening.
The issue of electoral reform was among hot topics discussed during the Labour Party town hall in New York on Saturday. Prime Minister Skerrit told the gathering of Dominicans his administration remained committed to electoral reform, but he will not preside over a government that will deny them the opportunity to vote.
One thing I have said to the nation, and I will make no compromise on this, is that I will not be in a government or in a country that will take a retrogressive step and to deny its citizens who are living out of Dominica the opportunity and the right to vote. I believe that this will be a most regressive step. Every country is seeking to see how we can engage diaspora. We should only come here and beg for money and then tell them you're Dominicans. That's not how people behave. I mean, and the fact remains that there are many of you in the diaspora who have more assets and more money in the bank than most of us living in Dominica. You come to Dominica more often than most of us. You have your homes, you have money in the banks. You have businesses in Dominica. Every one of you in this room has family in Dominica. Anything that happens in Dominica will affect you right here in the Tri-State area. And what arguments do you have to be on one hand supporting the absentee ballots by the United States of America and then denying people the right to come home to vote once they are legally registered in Dominica to vote? I cannot promise you tonight, because this is a progressive process, issue of absentee ballots for Dominica, because there are some complications to it. But I believe once you have the means of coming home to vote, you should exercise that right.
The Prime Minister told his audience government has been consistent on its position regarding electoral reform. He said government fully supports electoral reform, but denying Dominicans overseas the right to vote is a retrogressive step. And Dominica has been applauded for its solidarity with Cuba in light of the decades-old U.S. embargo on Cuba. Cuba's ambassador to Dominica, Ulysses Fernandez, says the blockade continues to hinder his country's economic growth.
In the blockade, if the blockade will not exist, the gross domestic product of Cuba will have grown around 10% as the average annual rate in the last 10 years. The blockade has intensified with the government of President Donald Trump, who authorized the use of Title III of the Helm-Dalton Law, one of the blockade laws, to initiate process in court of that country against Cuban or foreign entities that they develop business or invest in properties that were nationalized in Cuba, taking in account national and international legislation.
Fernandez says Cuba recognizes Dominica's stance on the issue and will continue to persevere despite the blockade.
We recognize the Dominican government's position of rejection of the economic, commercial, and financial blockade of the government of the United States against Cuba and their demand to put an end to it. You will receive the solidarity of the Cuban people, dear students. You will find a happy people facing their challenges and trusting in their victory, growing economically with modest results despite this blockade.
Cuba has remained a friend of Dominica throughout the years and has been especially helpful during the post-Maria recovery efforts.
In the case of the builders, they have participated in the rebuilding of the country after the Hurricane Maria. In their first years, they have worked on the rebuilding of 16 buildings in the State College, 4 primary schools, and more than 115 houses. This is an example of help between sister nations. We ratify the willingness to maintain our cooperation with the brotherly people of Dominica.
You are watching Channel 5 News. We'll have more after this.
If you're HIV positive or have an STI, having unprotected sex with multiple partners puts them in grave danger. You'll expose every partner and their present and future partners to HIV or another STI. Use a condom every time you have sex. You can live a productive life even if diagnosed with HIV. Remember, early detection is key to your survival. Be responsible, protect yourself and others. Help stop the spread of HIV and other STIs.
Dominica has welcomed a new team of Chinese medical specialists. Andrea Lui reports.
The team of 4 will work in the country's health system for 1 year. The current contingent arrived as another group of 4 departs after a year here. Chief Medical Officer Dr. David Johnson says the country's health sector has grown through the help of the People's Republic of China.
It is clear to me, firstly as a citizen of Dominica, and secondly as a senior staff within the Ministry of Health and Social Services for some time now, that the health sector in Dominica has been growing from strength to strength with assistance from countries like the People's Republic of China. The naming of the new hospital as the Dominica-China Friendship Hospital truly, in my opinion, underscores the deep and growing relationship between the Commonwealth of Dominica with assistance from the People's Republic of China in transforming our health system.
The team consists of an ophthalmologist, an oncologist, a urologist, and a cardiologist.
A few years ago, the governments of Dominica and the People's Republic of China entered into an agreement with a view of strengthening friendly cooperative relations between the two countries in various fields, to include medical and health services. Through this agreement, the Ministry of Health and Social Services have benefited from at least 2 important projects, namely the construction of the Dominica-China Friendship Hospital, and secondly, the Chinese Medical Team Support Program. We extend our deepest appreciation to the government of the People's Republic of China, and more specifically, the Health Commission of the Guangdong Province, who have organized and ensured the success of the medical team program.
The skills of the Chinese medical team will be especially useful in the Dominica-China Friendship Hospital, phase 1 of which is expected to officially open next month.
The first stage of the Dominica-China Friendship Hospital, the emergent building and the number 1 technical building, will be handover and opening next month. Yeah. If the continued work is smoothly, the second stage of the dormitory building will be complete before end of this year. The third stage of the outpatient building and number 1 technical building will complete by middle of the next year.
A former senior planning officer in Dominica has commended the Labour government on some of its achievements in education. Ted Serra is now a senior research specialist in Houston, Texas. He was one of the speakers at a Labour Party town hall held in New York on Saturday.
Recently, there was the decision to give free access to tertiary education. Again, I went on Facebook and we had a huge discussion about this. When the rest of the world is telling us that in order for our countries to be able to compete, in the global economy, everybody must have a first degree. And here we are still fighting about college education. Are we serious? We're not serious. And so every child needs to have an opportunity to have a college education. That is important. And that for me is significant. And I can tell you all of the many things that I've experienced in the 30 years that I was in Dominica. I think too, one of the biggest things was the transportation of students, and that used to cost us. When I was there, that cost over $2 million. And PM, if you remember, I was the architect. I remember I was the senior planning officer at the time, and I was told to go back and come back with a series of scenarios that would allow us. You would pass through Dominica on a Monday morning, especially when a tourist ship was in port. And all the bus drivers would leave the kids on the road. It used to be a mess. You passed through Maho and it was a mess. All right? And when we finally got that thing together, and we had to go back so many, but we finally got it together, I thought too that was one of the biggest changes that I had seen in education in Dominica as well. The ability to be able to transport our kids to and from school, particularly high school kids. And I was, very, very excited about that.
Sarah believes part of Dominicans' contribution to the country's development is their right to participate in the electoral process.
That as the country develops, we're going to be prouder, but each of us have a contribution to make to that country. And a part of that contribution is the ability to vote and the ability to say what happens to the country. And I will not back down on this. I will stand up for this. I will stand up for the right to vote in my country, just the way that every single American has a right to vote in their country. We too have a right to vote in our country.
And Prime Minister Skerrit says the OECS Monetary Council is expected to discuss a proposal to purchase Scotiabank branches within the OECS member countries. Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Brown previously announced his intention to pursue the acquisition of Scotiabank interests, but both Mr. Brown and Prime Minister Skerrit says the issue will be more suitably addressed at the level of the OECS Monetary Council. The idea is to now make it an OECS effort to acquire Scotiabank assets. Scotiabank has announced plans to sell its assets to Republic Financial Holdings based in Trinidad and Tobago.
The process is not completed yet because up to this moment, Scotiabank has not gotten back to the respective governments in respect to the final approvals required for this acquisition to be consummated. And as the Prime Minister indicated, we'll have a more in-depth and focused discussion on this matter at the Monetary Council, where it is a better place as opposed to the OECS authority. But we are keen to discuss this matter. Obviously, our interest is to ensure in all actions taken by various stakeholders or governments themselves, that we always want to ensure that the best interests, first and foremost, of our citizens and residents are protected, and therefore we will need to have a role to play in assuring that this is protected at all reasonable costs. So I'm hoping that citizens appreciate when statements are made. We're there's no opposition to private transactions or the free economy. It is ensuring that the interests of our citizens, the interests of our countries are assured and are protected, because that is a fundamental responsibility of a government. And one must not allow internecine political ramblings in our countries to set aside that very lofty responsibility, sacred responsibility of a government. And if a government were to shirk on that responsibility, the question is, how would you define that government? So we will have further discussions at the Monetary Council on this issue.
Brown previously said the decision to sell without consulting the Antiguan government was reckless.
Here are some tips to reduce mosquito presence in and around your home. Keep water storage containers properly covered. Remove containers that can collect water from your surroundings. Keep garbage bins tightly covered. Pick up your litter and remove all tires from your yard. Keep gutters free of leaves and twigs to prevent stagnant water. Prevent Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. Fight the bite. This is a public service announcement from the Dominica Red Cross.
This message is supported by Flow. To end the news, a look again at the headlines. Dominica welcomes a new team of Chinese medical specialists. Prime Minister Scary tells a town hall meeting in New York his administration will not deny them the right to vote, and disaster management standards to be made into law by the end of this year. Feel free to contact us at news@mapping2k4.com. You may access our past newscasts on our YouTube channel. On behalf of the production team, I am Julian Morris. Thank you for watching. Join us again tomorrow.